From the outset of his presidency, Donald Trump has stirred profound anxiety, his actions viewed as a direct assault on the fundamental principles underpinning modern liberalism. His policies and rhetoric have targeted the very pillars of inclusivity and individual liberty that have long defined Western democracies. Trump's assault is not merely a difference in policy. It represents a fundamental rejection of the values of tolerance, diversity, and the essential role of independent institutions in safeguarding a free society. His attacks on the media, his demonization of immigrants, and his disdain for the judiciary all point to a dangerous erosion of democratic norms. Trump's presidency has been marked by a consistent disregard for the norms of governance and a blatant disregard for the truth. His attacks on the free press, labeling any unfavorable coverage as fake news, have undermined public trust in a vital pillar of a functioning democracy. Furthermore, his divisive rhetoric, often laced with xenophobic and racist undertones, has inflamed social divisions and eroded the sense of shared national identity that is crucial for a healthy democracy. The fear is not merely about specific policies, but about the broader erosion of democratic values and the normalization of illiberalism. Trump's presidency has been a stress test for American democracy, exposing the fragility of norms and the vulnerability of institutions to a leader intent on subverting them. His attacks on the judiciary, his attempts to obstruct justice, and his disregard for the rule of law have all raised serious concerns about his commitment to democratic principles. The alarm bells are ringing, and it is imperative that citizens recognize the threat and actively defend the values that underpin a free and just society. The fear stemming from Trump's assault on liberal values is not rooted in partisan politics, but in a deep concern for the future of American democracy. His presidency has been a wake-up call reminding us that democratic institutions are not self-sustaining and require constant vigilance and active citizenship to protect them from the threat of authoritarianism. The task before us is to channel this fear into action, to defend the principles of liberalism, and to ensure that the American experiment in self-government endures. What makes Trump's presidency particularly alarming is not just the content of his policies, but the unprecedented manner in which he has sought to implement them. His disregard for established norms, his attacks on the media and the judiciary, and his penchant for authoritarian rhetoric all evoke disturbing parallels to the rise of illiberal leaders in other parts of the world. From his very first days in office, Trump has shown a disturbing willingness to undermine the institutions and norms that have long safeguarded American democracy, raising fears that he is not merely a different kind of president, but a threat to the democratic system itself. One of the most striking aspects of Trump's presidency has been his systematic assault on the institutions and norms that have traditionally constrained executive power. He has repeatedly attacked the judiciary, labeling judges who rule against him as so-called judges and questioning their legitimacy. He has shown contempt for the role of the free press, branding any unfavorable coverage as fake news and seeking to discredit journalists who hold him to account. And he has repeatedly sought to undermine the independence of law enforcement agencies, publicly pressuring them to drop investigations into him and his allies. These actions have not occurred in a vacuum. They are part of a broader global trend of democratic backsliding, with strongman leaders in countries like Hungary, Poland, and the Philippines eroding democratic norms and consolidating power. Trump's rhetoric and tactics often mirror those of these illiberal leaders, raising concerns that he is not simply an American anomaly, but part of a more worrying international phenomenon. The parallels are too striking to ignore, and they serve as a stark warning about the fragility of democratic institutions, even in countries with long traditions of democratic governance. The world is watching with a mixture of fascination and horror as the United States, long considered a beacon of democracy, grapples with the rise of illiberalism within its own borders. The outcome of this struggle will have profound implications not just for America, but for the future of democracy around the world. The stakes are high and the time for complacency is long past. The consequences of Trump's assault on liberal values extend far beyond the realm of abstract political theory. They threaten to unravel the very fabric of American society. His policies, rooted in nativism, protectionism, and a disdain for expertise, risk undermining the very foundations of America's economic prosperity and social cohesion. The damage inflicted by his presidency may not be immediately apparent, but its insidious effects will be felt for generations to come, eroding the trust, tolerance, and sense of shared purpose that have long been the hallmarks of American society. One of the most immediate and tangible consequences of Trump's presidency has been the erosion of trust in government and its institutions. His constant attacks on the media, his demonization of opponents, and his blatant disregard for the truth have created an atmosphere of cynicism and distrust, making it increasingly difficult to find common ground or engage in constructive dialogue. This erosion of trust is not merely a political problem, it is a societal one, undermining the very foundations of cooperation and collective action upon which a healthy democracy depends. Moreover, Trump's policies have exacerbated existing inequalities and divisions within American society. His tax cuts have disproportionately benefited the wealthy, while his attacks on social safety net programs have left the most vulnerable even more exposed. His anti-immigrant rhetoric and policies have stoked fear and resentment, while his efforts to roll back environmental protections have disproportionately impacted communities of color. Far from making America great again, Trump's presidency has left the country more divided, more unequal, and more vulnerable to the forces of division and despair. The true cost of Trump's presidency cannot be measured solely in economic indicators or policy outcomes. It must be measured in the erosion of the values and ideals that have long defined America's place in the world. His legacy will be one of division, distrust, and a diminished sense of national purpose. Rebuilding what has been lost will require a sustained commitment to the principles of inclusivity, equality, and democratic governance, and a rejection of the politics of fear and resentment that he so effectively exploited. In the face of this sustained assault on liberal values, it is more important than ever to articulate the benefits and defend the legacy of liberalism. Liberalism at its core is a belief in the inherent dignity and equality of all individuals. And it is this belief that has fueled centuries of progress in expanding rights, promoting opportunity, and creating a more just and equitable world. To defend liberalism is not to defend a particular political party or ideology, but rather to defend the very principles of open inquiry, individual liberty, and democratic governance that have made human flourishing possible. One of the most important contributions of liberalism has been the creation of institutions and norms that protect individual rights and freedoms, even from the tyranny of the majority. The rule of law, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and protection from arbitrary government interference are not mere abstract ideals. They are the essential building blocks of a free and just society. They are the safeguards that protect us from the excesses of power, whether it be the power of the state, the power of the majority, or the power of any individual or group seeking to impose its will on others. Furthermore, liberalism has fostered a culture of tolerance, diversity, and respect for individual differences. It recognizes that a society is strengthened, not weakened, by the contributions of people from all walks of life, and that true progress is impossible without the free exchange of ideas and perspectives. This commitment to openness and inclusivity is not merely a matter of social justice. It is also essential for economic dynamism, scientific innovation, and cultural vitality. The defense of liberalism is not a passive endeavor. It requires active engagement in the public square, a willingness to challenge falsehoods and misrepresentations, and a commitment to upholding the values of truth, reason, and evidence-based decision-making. It requires us to be vigilant in the face of threats to democratic institutions and norms, and to hold our leaders accountable for their actions. The future of liberalism, and indeed the future of democracy itself, depends on our willingness to stand up for the values we hold dear and to fight for the kind of society we want to live in.